Lewis Carroll is the author of one of my favorite books, Alice in Wonderland. And he used to say that communication for him, it's almost an impossible task because putting a picture that you have in your mind in the other person's mind, it's almost nearly impossible. It doesn't matter how good communicator you are, it's nearly impossible to pass that information intact. The question is why? Why is so complicated? Because we have different experiences and our perception is completely biased and full of very unique ways to perceive the world. So we cannot communicate with words exactly what I'm saying. If I try to ask you what love means to you, it's probably very different from what Veronica thinks to what Elizabeth thinks or other person thinks in this room. This activity, I just do it as an icebreaker because I want to tell you that what we're about to see in this presentation, it's not the only truth that you are going to find here, right? There is not such a thing as one truth. There is just what it works for you. So I hope that whatever you feel it works for you, you take it home and you try to process and accommodate this in your own belief system, okay? So I'm not saying the truth. I don't have the whole truth, and probably I may be wrong in some of the things that I'm gonna say, but this is my truth. This is what I have in my mind, okay? Yes, Cameron. No, it's okay. They can keep it right now. Thank you. Just focus on understanding that the experience of every person is unique. And we as providers, I think we need more resources and empathy. Earlier, I attended a presentation, a beautiful presentation about empathy. And empathy is not a very easy exercise. We need to understand that we cannot fully understand. And empathy is just being with one person and letting them know that I cannot feel exactly what you feel, but I can be with you not knowing how you feel. I cannot be in the shoes, because a lot of people say you just need to put your shoes on another person to completely understand, but I cannot put the shoes of another person and feel exactly what they're feeling. I have a friend right now, she is pregnant and she's having such a hard time. And I cannot say, I understand what you're going through. I will never understand what she's going through, but I can know that she's having a hard time and I can be with her, not knowing what is going on with her. So providers, we need a lot of these. And I feel like this presentation, it's gonna help us to understand trauma. It's very important to reach empathy. And what we're gonna see is a perspective, a humanistic perspective on trauma, how to understand people a little bit better, okay? Oh, no, that's not. There it is. So what is trauma and why it is so disturbing? Please raise your hand if you feel that you have had any emotional trauma in your life. You don't have to share anything, but you just raise your hand if you feel like you have had any emotional trauma in your life. Perfect. Most of you raise your hand. Some of us, like me, when I ask myself if I have had any trauma, at first I was like, well, I cannot consider any very traumatic experience, but at the end of the day, we all have had trauma in our lives. Sometimes it's just hard to accept this. And trauma, it comes in different forms and in different shapes. The other question is how did this trauma affect your life in the past? And the other question that I want you to ask for yourself is, does this trauma still affect my life? Is it still present in my life? When we talk about trauma, one of the branches of humanistic psychology, which is the Gestalt therapy, introduced in the world by Fritz Perls in Germany, he started to describe something called core trauma, or called core wounds. Is these wounds that we are victims in our childhood. And these core wounds are very deep emotional wounds. Most of them form from suppressed pain and emotions internalized from a significant event, usually from our caregivers. Those are the ones that create usually that trauma. And it's not because they're bad people. I don't think my parents or your parents were bad people. Sometimes it's kind of like inevitable to receive these core wounds. It's not intentional, but they're gonna be there. So a good example of this, and one thing that it's very important to say about core wounds is that usually this pain will likely grow and create a belief system about myself, often leading to compensating behaviors to manage the pain. Usually these behaviors that we create, that's what different approaches called as neurotic behaviors. So neurotic behaviors usually come from these wounds. What is a neurotic behavior? A neurotic behavior basically is a response that we try to use all the time in every situation. It's like, let's say that you learn a song and you decide to sing that song every time, in every place. Let's say that the only song that I know is the happy birthday, and I decided to sing that song everywhere. A lot of people are gonna say, well, this song probably it's inappropriate for this moment. That's a neurotic behavior. So what happened with a core wound, and I'm gonna give you a good example of this, is abandonment. Let's say that I was abandoned as a little kid, as a little boy. And then that abandonment created in me a necessity of probably dependency, maybe. I'm just giving a rough example. This is not true. This is not everyone. I'm not talking about any specific. But maybe I created dependency because as a result of that abandonment, I don't want to feel that again. I don't want to feel that loneliness because it's too hurtful. And then I decided to become a very dependent person because now every person that I have in my life as a new relationship, I grab to that person and I don't want to let go of that person. Because abandonment is very hurtful. So what I do is I try to be dependent. I try to be very pleasing to everyone or in a relationship, and I always respond to that. Even though if that person is hurting me, usually the response when people is hurting you is establish a boundary, right? That's the adequate response, but not for me because I have a neurotic behavior. So how I respond is instead of saying, hey, don't cross that boundary, stop right there, I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, probably it was my fault. That's our neurotic behavior. But in humanism, we don't call neurotic behaviors. We call them just a creative way to defend ourselves. Can we pass to the next? Because I try to point it at you. It was working earlier. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. So maybe it's the battery. If we go to different authors, we're gonna see different core wounds. But in 1993, Laura Perls described these as the 5 core wounds: abandonment, betrayal, physical, sexual, mental, or emotional abuse, abuse in general, rejection, shame, or humiliation. If I am the victim of any of these core wounds, most likely I will develop a defense mechanism or a creative way to defend myself. I'm gonna give you just an example of what could be a neurotic behavior for each one. This is, again, not universal. This is not for everyone. I'm not talking about everyone. Abandonment may lead into a neurotic behavior called dependency. Betrayal may lead a neurotic behavior as lack of trust. Abuse may lead to aggressiveness. Rejection may lead to perfectionism. Shame or humiliation may lead into a lack of empathy in general. What I'm saying is that our behaviors, our current behaviors, probably are results of core wounds, are results of traumas, but we're not aware of that because those are just some subconscious responses, and we don't know what are these responses coming from. The other day, I was talking to David, the president of the board of directors for Reach Family Services. And we were talking about fostering, because right now I'm about to start fostering. And this is an amazing journey. And David was telling me that it's so important to understand that my picture of that foster family that I have is not gonna be the kids, my husband and me sitting in a dining table, laughing and saying, we love you, and now we have a family. It's not gonna be like that, because we're gonna have to deal with people with trauma plus our own traumas. And it's gonna be an adjustment. It's not gonna be that easy. And probably some of you already know this because you have a family. And you know that it's not that simple as it sounds. So understanding trauma, and this is trauma-informed care, understanding that there's trauma and we need to be empathetic. We need to understand what are people coming from. We need to be very observant. Sometimes our focus is just on behaviors. Oh, my kid is doing good at school, nothing's wrong with my kid. And we don't do anything about it. Even that, I have had so many conversations during CFTs, because a lot of case managers, they see a little bit of improvement and they're like, then we don't need the services no more. We need to close the services for this client. And we have advocates for so many kids that they want to close services immediately when they see some type of improvement. And we don't understand that there's so much more behind, and there are so many things around. And the support, the emotional support, is something that we need throughout our lives in general. Therapy for me in general is not just when I'm feeling down, when I feel like I need help. Therapy is also for me to improve and to grow. So I think it is very important to keep understanding trauma as a very pillar in our lives that we need to keep working on constantly. Oh, there it is. So the humanistic approach is the exploration of the personal meaning of the experience most significantly. of its existential meaning. What is the major difference between the humanistic approach and the other approaches? So with the biological approach, we usually focus on the body. We think that the brain enables the emotions and the memories. Therefore, we attribute the depression, for example, to our genes. And we treat depression with a medicine. For a psychoanalytic approach, we think that basically we're broken all the time. This is a very depressing approach in general. I don't like psychoanalysis. That doesn't mean that it's not true or it doesn't work for somebody. For me, it doesn't. For me, I tried psychoanalysis and it didn't work for me. Behavioral, we just focus on behaviors. If this kid is doing good at school, and if it's doing good with the parents, they don't need help. They're good. They're having good behaviors. They don't need anything. For humanism, we focus on this constant growth, that we feel that you need to keep growing for the rest of your life. We know that you're not sick, that you're not broken, or that you're not good or bad. We just think that we in general need to keep growing. And that's why I love humanism, because we don't feel that one person is sick. That person just needs to learn something. This person doesn't have something called, and we don't believe in diagnosis in general. This person is not depressed. This person just needs more motivation and self-motivation in their lives. It's an ability, it's a skill, self-motivation. And this skill, it's hard to learn when we don't have the right system, support system. So we focus on the whole system, we focus on the whole family, and we focus on try to keep learning, not just the individual, but the whole system. Try to think of grow as a plant, human grow as a plant. If you have that that soil, that fertile soil, then the plant can grow. But if the soil is not that good, that plant is not going to grow. No matter what you do, if that soil is not good, that plant is not going to grow. So we need that fertile soil to promote that growth. Can we move to the next one? Humanistic psychology helps us deal more realistically with two central paradoxes of the human condition: freedom and fate, and uniqueness and unity, that are at the heart of the psychology of trauma. When we start believing in freedom and uniqueness and unity, we understand that each person have their uniqueness response to grow. And the expert and the only person that can promote that growth is that person. Providers and facilitators, we just put the fertile soil. We just put the ground to promote that growth. According to humanism, there's a tendency, a natural and inner tendency of growth. What's a tendency? If let's say that right now, I put a ball right here and I do this, the ball is gonna tend to fall. That's a natural tendency. So humans, we are an inner and natural tendency to be good and to grow. There is no such thing as like bad people per se. There's no such a thing as a bad people. We are all good. The only problem is that we didn't have the fertile soil. Well, have you thought that maybe you didn't put the fertile soil for your kid to grow? Have you thought about that? Or have you thought that your kid come from trauma, that it was not your fault, but maybe it's your responsibility to keep working on that? I'm so amazed of the parents that I have seen in this conference, because the level of involvement is amazing. And that's what we need, that involvement. So we just need to keep promoting that tendency of grow, creating the space. The ability to create life-affirming connections as therapeutic agents. This is something that I want to work on right now, because Carl Rogers, he said that the growth sometimes doesn't come from an expert in behavior that is going to fix you because this is the doctor. He and Carl Jung specifically, Carl Rogers, Fritz Perls, Laura Perls, a lot of humanistic psychologists, they started to create something called a relationship of growth. That was the whole thing that they were doing. And what is the relationship of growth? It's just a relationship free of any negative behaviors. It's just basically creating a fertile soil. And this type of relationship has three characteristics. It has to be authentic. It has to be with empathy and positive regards. Those are the three conditions. And that's what we call something very famous and that a lot of people use, called personal-centered therapy or client-centered therapy. And that's what it is. It's just a relationship. If you have that relationship with people, then people are going to keep growing. What can we do to improve our relationships and to promote growth and to promote health, mental health in other people? We just have to be authentic. We just need to have empathy, and we just need to have positive consideration to others. We're going to do a little activity. So I want you to be with the person that you were working earlier. Okay. And now I want you to look at that person. Try to put in front of that person. And I'm going to give you just 1 minute, just to talk to that person. And you're going to, one of you are going to be, is going to be A, and the other person is going to be B. A and B. So for this part, A is going to share whatever you want, whatever A wants of their life. I'm going to share something of my life, whatever you want, something from your life, about your job, about your school, about your family, about whatever you want of your life. You're going to share that letter A. And number B, your objective is trying to help the other person, trying to say something helpful to the other person. Whatever you want to say, try to say something helpful to the other person. Okay, so you're going to have just 1 minute. It's just 60 seconds. So try to make this very, very quick. Okay, so I'm going to start right now.
Wrap it up, wrap it up. Okay, time's up, time's up. All right, now we're gonna change. We're gonna switch. And now B is gonna share something, and A, you try to say something helpful, something nice to that person, okay? The time starts right now. Wrap it up, wrap it up. Okay, time's up, time's up. All right. No. After the workshop, you can have all the time you want. Excellent. Now we're gonna make a very interesting switch. We're gonna do exactly the same, just with one difference. We're gonna change the goal of the listener. Okay? Now the listener, your goal is not to say something helpful. Now your goal is to really understand what the other person is saying. There has to be a very authentic interest for you to understand what the other person is saying. You can ask questions, but try to not to ask so much. Just try to understand really by listening, okay? That's your only objective, is to understand. You need to understand what the other person is saying. And the most important is how that person is feeling. Try to look in the world of that person. Try to see where that person is coming from. That is your only objective this time, okay? No, switch the topic so we can start all over. And you're gonna have again 1 minute, and we're gonna start with A this time again. 1 minute, and it starts now.
Oh, here it works. Probably is the battery. Okay, huh. Interesting. I want to see. Oh, now it's working.
Okay, time is up. All right. Now B needs to share something, and A needs to understand. That is your only objective. Again, try to enter to the world of that person. Try to really understand how that person feels. Don't focus on helping. Don't focus on saying anything. Just focus on understand. Okay? We're gonna start right now.
I feel like there's difference.
Do you see the difference? Oh. Okay, time's up, time's up, time's up. I know you want to keep talking. It's very interesting now what the other person is saying. So I want you to tell me what was the difference between the first activity in which you had to say something and the second one. What was the difference as a speaker or as a listener? It doesn't matter. David.
Very good. Somebody raise his hand over there? No?
So providers, that's a very hard thing to understand. Sometimes we feel that necessity of solving or solving the life of the other person, that we need to do something about it. But sometimes the best help we can provide is just by creating a connection, a relationship. That relationship, according to different studies, an authentic relationship can promote more growth than a directive therapy. Somebody that it needs to tell you, oh, well, you're doing this wrong, or you need to do this, or now you're going to do it. Sometimes we just need to be heard. We have really bad intention, and I really recommend you, if you really want to improve your listening, to check the slides of can you remember your name, Jasmine? Jasmine Martinez earlier. Her presentation was about levels of listening. That's the name of it. Please check that out if you really want to improve a good relationship, an authentic relationship. I was talking to her earlier and I was like, this is amazing. It's your presentation connects a lot to what I'm going to talk about. So I really recommend you to check that out if you really want to improve connections by listening. Again. Oh, there it is. I know. Yes, there was a number one. And I apologize. I decided deliberately to skip it, but I'm going to put it now that you called me out. Okay. So that approach requires also the ability to confront one's own fears. When I confront my own trauma, when I confront my own feelings, it's a better way to understand another person. When I know what are my topics, when I know what are my situations, it's better to understand another person. Authenticity is a very important characteristic to create a relationship. Carl Rogers used to say that the more authentic I am, I'm going to promote more the authenticity of the other person, and I'm going to kind of like lower the defense mechanisms. I remember when I was in school and the psychoanalysis and I was studying all of this, the teachers will never allow you to show your feelings in certain ways, because you can create transference, or you can create introjection, or you can create a lot of psychological mechanisms that they don't want to. But for humanistic providers, I remember one of my first humanistic provider was one of my teachers, and she used to cry in our sessions, my sessions. She would cry. And I'll be like, that's so unprofessional. Like, how my provider is crying when I am the client. But guess what? Somehow, that's the best connection I made. And it's true. When you're authentic with your feelings, you can create so many good things out of it. And I'm going to give you an example. I remember this one when I was doing my practices and I was in supervised therapies. I was with a client that was a little bit aggressive with me. Very, very aggressive with me. And he would say like passive aggressive things. Like, oh, all men are stupid. And I'm like, well, I'm a man. Or he would say, he would make these remarks that were very aggressive. And I was trying to be professional, and I was trying to tell her, well, this is not a very nice thing to say. You need to do this, or you need to stop doing that. But she wouldn't understand. She was relentless. And that's the moment when I did the switch, because I was talking to one of the humanistic teachers, and she was like, well, you don't start showing your true emotions and let's see what happened. And I did. And one day I was in this session and she started to become aggressive with me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm starting feeling like I don't want to see you anymore. My Tuesdays are kind of like my hard day because you are very aggressive with me. And her immediate response was like, yes, you're like every man. You take things very personal. I'm like, well, you are attacking me. So yes, I'm not feeling appreciated. I don't feel like I really want to keep doing this. And you're attacking me and I feel kind of like upset. But you know what? I'm not going to abandon you like the other men in your life. I'm going to stay with you. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm not going to allow you to do this. But I was in touch with my anger, and I demonstrate and I communicate my feelings. So when you communicate your feelings, you can start creating a relationship that it can be just at this professional, superficial level and go deeper and create a very unique connection. And that's when the growth starts. When I cry in front of a person that is telling me that her mom is dying and she's very sad, and when I start crying, it's like, you know what, I this makes me feel sad, and just by saying that, I can create a connection, and the other person can feel sometimes more understood. So a humanistic provider allows himself to be authentic, and it's congruent with what he thinks, what he speaks, and what he feels. That creates more growth than just a superficial professional relationship. Creativity and communication. It is demonstrated by the logotherapy and different therapies that are now becoming very popular around the world, that with creativity, we can overcome a lot of trauma. A lot of trauma just by creating, because we give meaning to my pain and we can create something beautiful out of that. Somebody showed me earlier a picture of, there was one presentation or one workshop that it was talking about how we can overcome trauma with art, for example. And promoting creativity is a good way to heal. Sadly, our society don't promote creativity that much. In general, we promote just a very stricter shape of the world. But try to practice it a little bit more. Right now, I'm gonna request for you to do another activity. Yeah, I can do another activity. Ben, can you help me with the first that I had? All right, and also the markers that I have. Yes. Yes, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Oh. Through art, and not just with painting, but a lot of people use music. I know this artist Adele. She creates usually her songs after, sadly, every breakup. But it's they are so beautiful songs, sadly. But we can use our pain and our trauma in general to create art. So Ben right now is gonna pass around some papers. And I'm gonna request for you to be creative at this point. And if you don't have something to write with, please raise your hand and we can give you something to write with. Sí.
Y habla más fuerte el micrófono. Me acaba de mandar mensaje.
Okay. What are the markers in the markers? Oh, right. He couldn't open the box. All right, if you need something to write with, they're gonna give you some markers. All right. So I want you to draw a little house. You have just 1 minute. So draw a house in 1 minute. Not even, I'm gonna give you just 30 seconds. I apologize, just 30 seconds. Yep. Okay, I did it on purpose. I didn't give you too much time on purpose. But probably some of you did something like this.
Or maybe you just
Went for something like this. Probably. If you were a little bit more creative, maybe you added like clouds or a tree. But in general, this is the house that everyone draws when they ask to draw a house. Why do we draw that house? How do we know that that was the house we were requested to draw? Because the majority draw that house. Why? What was that? That's what we learned. That's what we learned. That is the right question, the right answer. That's what we learned. So the challenge for us is to kind of like not forget what we learned, but relearn new things, and that is creativity. Learning how can we respond in a different way from what we're used to. So try to change your routine, try to change the things that you do normally, and try to ask to the people that you work with that creativity and communication. Try to communicate in a different way than we usually do. That's a very good way to promote that relationship of growth. And number 4. Oh. Again. What was that? Okay. Let me go back. There it is. Okay, that should be number 4. I apologize. Development of strengths and in self and in other. Humanistic providers in general, we know our own strengths and weaknesses and can help others identify their unique coping skills. They are often self-disclosing or transparent in their clinical work with others. So this is very important because honesty is the best thing that we can do when we promote growth. If we are honest with our own weakness, with the fact that, you know, I don't know this, but maybe we can work it out, maybe we can help more, we can seek for more help. That is the best way that we can create trust in the person that we have in front of us, when they know that we are also humans. So healing may therefore occur in a relationship that allows the narration and reflection of one's subjective experience. It allows you to become more aware of ourselves and the world. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go like this very quick because my time is up. A humanistic relationship in general requires of these three things: congruence, genuine, which we already talked about. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to allow ourselves to be humans, to show our emotions. We need to be empathetic, and we can achieve this by listening a little bit more. And the most important thing for me is unconditional positive regard and acceptance. And I love that this year's word was acceptance, because that's what we need to do in general with the people that we work with. We need to understand that no matter what you do, the person that I have in front of me, you're very valuable. No matter what is my trauma, no matter what is my behavior, no matter what is my diagnosis, the person that is going to be working next to me is going to accept me. So acceptance is probably the key for that fertile soil. If we learn how to accept people and how to consider them in a positive regard, they're gonna feel safe. They're not gonna have that need to protect themselves anymore. And that's how we can stop those neurotic behaviors. That's how we can promote that growth in everyone. Start trying to do that with your families, and then also start doing it with the people that you work with, and use it in your community. Having this type of relationship is the best way we can create a better world. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any question, please come to me at the end of the session, because I know we're done. Come to me and talk to me if you want to ask me something. Thank you very much.